For 100 years, archaeologists walked the Nazca Desert with measuring tape and magnifying glasses, slowly cataloging roughly 430 ancient drawings etched into the Peruvian sand. 430 figures found over the course of an entire century. The discovery rate, when you break down the numbers, works out to about 1.5 geoglyphs per year, using traditional methods between 1940 and the year 2000. 1.5 per year. That is the speed at which human eyes and human boots could read this desert. Then in September 2022, a team of Japanese and American researchers pointed an artificial intelligence at aerial photographs of the same desert. 6 months later, the artificial intelligence had found 303 new geoglyphs that human eyes had missed for over 2,000 years. That works out to roughly 50 per month, 20 times faster than anything that came before. But what the machine discovered was not just more of the same famous lines. It uncovered a completely hidden second layer of the Nazca Lines that archaeologists never knew existed. Smaller figures, darker images, decapitated heads, killer whales wielding knives, priests carrying human skulls, all of them invisible from above, all of them positioned along ancient foot trails where Nazca travelers once walked 2 millennia ago. The findings were published on September 23, 2024, in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, one of the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals in the world. The study was titled AI Accelerated Nazca Survey Nearly Doubles the Number of Known Figurative Geoglyphs and Sheds Light on Their Purpose. It was edited by Joyce Marcus of the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And what that paper revealed does not just rewrite the history of the Nazca Lines. It raises a question that should make anyone uncomfortable. If a machine can find in 6 months what humans missed for a century, what else is hiding in plain sight beneath our feet that we simply cannot see? To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning. Not to the AI, not to the researchers, back 2,000 years, to the civilization that created these drawings in the first place, and then vanished from the face of the earth. The Nazca culture flourished from approximately 200 BCE to 600 CE in the Rio Grande de Nazca drainage system of southern Peru. Some sources extend that window to as early as 100 BCE and as late as 700 or 800 CE. The Nazca Pampa, the flat desert plateau bearing the geoglyphs, spans roughly 500 square kilometers, about 190 square miles, located 350 kilometers south of Lima, at an elevation of roughly 500 meters above sea level. The region is one of the driest places on Earth. Almost no rainfall, almost no erosion. The very conditions that made life nearly impossible for the Nazca people are the same conditions that have preserved their artwork for 2 millennia. The Nazca were preceded by the Paracas culture, to whom some of the earliest geoglyphs are attributed, including possibly the figure known as the astronaut or owlman, a 30-meter humanoid etched into a hillside that has puzzled researchers for decades. They were also influenced by the Chavin culture, one of the earliest major civilizations in the Andes. But the Nazca themselves were anything but primitive imitators. They engineered underground aqueducts called puquillos, channels with distinctive spiral-shaped access openings that are visible from the sky. These puquillos tapped into underground rivers and brought water to the surface, enabling irrigation of cotton, maize, beans, and potatoes in an otherwise uninhabitable landscape. The engineering precision required to build these systems is remarkable. You need to understand the underground water table, the slope of the terrain, and the flow dynamics well enough to create channels that move water uphill in some sections using nothing but gravity and pressure. More than 30 of these puquillos still function today. Modern farmers in the Nazca region still use water systems that were built 2,000 years ago. A civilization that could not see their own artwork from above created water infrastructure that has outlasted the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and every European colonial power that followed. Their pottery was among the most vivid and complex in all of pre-Columbian South America. Polychrome ceramics depicting animals, humans, and supernatural beings with extraordinary detail. Their textiles featured elaborate patterns and religious motifs that demonstrated weaving skill on par with anything produced in the ancient world. And critically, the same creatures found on their pottery, the orcas, the hummingbirds, the spiders, the monkeys, also appear as geoglyphs etched into the desert floor. This cross-medium iconographic consistency means whatever these images represented, they meant it deeply enough to reproduce across every surface they touched. Pottery, textiles, and the desert itself were all part of the same visual language. The Nazca created their geoglyphs using a deceptively simple technique. They removed the top 30 to 40 centimeters of reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles, exposing the lighter-colored sand, clay, and lime beneath. The lines range from 40 to 210 centimeters in width, because there is virtually no rainfall. Winds sweep sand from the grooves rather than filling them, preserving the designs across millennia. Evidence suggests they started with small-scale models, possibly drawn on pottery or woven into textiles. They then scaled up proportions using stakes and ropes, using ancient units of measurement to maintain accuracy. Spirals were created by releasing slack in a cord while moving in a circular path. Animal forms were produced through grid-based enlargement from the smaller drawings, and the scale of what they produced is staggering. The pelican stretches 285 meters, nearly 1,000 feet, making it the largest figurative geoglyph in the desert. The condor spans 130 to 135 meters in length and 115 meters in width. The hummingbird, which UNESCO uses as the symbol of the Nazca Lines, measures somewhere between 96 and 165 meters, depending on the source. The monkey stretches over 100 meters, with its famous spiral tail and 9-fingered hand. There are more than 800 straight lines in the desert, some extending over 48 kilometers, and more than 300 geometric shapes, triangles, rectangles, trapezoids, spirals, arrows, and zigzags carved across the pampa. The central irony of the Nazca Lines, one that has fascinated and tormented researchers for decades, is inescapable. These massive designs, many of which can only be fully appreciated from the air, were created by a civilization that never had the ability to see their completed work from above. They built artwork for a perspective they could never possess. Modern humans first noticed the Nazca Lines in the 1920s, when Peruvian aircraft pilots spotted strange markings from the sky. In 1927, the first official scientific study began. Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespe presented findings at a Lima conference in 1939. But it was an American historian named Paul Kosok who truly grasped the scale of what lay below. Kosok came to Peru in 1939 to study ancient irrigation systems, the puquios, and he ended up hiring crop-dusting aircraft to survey the wider desert. He took the first aerial photographs of the lines. On June 21, 1941, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, Paul Kosok watched the sun set exactly over the end of one of the lines. He called Nazca the largest astronomy book in the world and proposed the astronomical calendar theory that would dominate the field for decades. But the person who truly dedicated her entire existence to the lines was a German mathematician named Maria Reiche. She arrived in Peru in the 1940s and was introduced to the Nazca site by Kosok. What followed was one of the most extraordinary acts of dedication in the history of archaeology. Maria Reiche spent more than 50 years, from her arrival in the 1940s until her death on June 8, 1998, studying and protecting the lines. She became known as the Lady of the Lines, the Dama de las Líneas. She measured every geoglyph she could reach using tape measures, sextants, compasses, and theodolites. She described their proportions as mathematically perfect. She published 15 books, starting with Mystery on the Desert in 1949. She received a National Geographic grant in 1974 to continue her research. She lived in a small house near the desert and worked alone under the blazing Peruvian sun for decade after decade, long after most researchers would have moved on. There is a haunting detail about Reiche that researchers still discuss. She lost a finger during her time in Cusco. The famous monkey geoglyph has only 4 fingers on one hand, 9 in total. Whether coincidence or cosmic irony, the woman who gave her life to the lines came to physically mirror one of their most famous figures. Her tireless advocacy was instrumental in securing the Nazca Lines designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, officially named the Lines and Geoglyphs of Nazca and Palpa. But her astronomical alignment theory has been largely superseded by more recent research. While some alignments with solstices and equinoxes have been confirmed, they are insufficient to explain all the lines. Reiche died in 1998, 6 years before Yamagata University's research program even began. She never knew that artificial intelligence would one day accomplish in 6 months what she could not in 50 years. Now, where did all those famous lines actually lead? The answer is a place most people have never heard of, a place called Cahuachi. Cahuachi sits 24 to 28 kilometers west of the modern city of Nazca, in the Pampa de Atarco, at 365 meters above sea level. Active from approximately 1 CE to 500 CE, this complex covers 24 square kilometers. Its core area contains more than 40 mounds, topped with adobe structures. The Great Pyramid alone stands 30 meters high, with a base of 4,000 square meters and a length of 150 meters. Additional structures include the stepped temple and multiple ceremonial platforms. Construction used a technique called chamber filling, where adobe bricks were retained within woven mat walls, and natural hills were modified and augmented with massive adobe structures built on top. It is the largest pre-Inca adobe site in all of Peru. But here is the critical fact that changes everything about how we understand this site. Cahuachi was not a city. Archaeological evidence shows almost no permanent residential structures. It was a pilgrimage destination with a fluctuating population. Temporary wattle and daub structures housed pilgrims during ceremonial events. Community-wide participation in rituals brought people from across the entire Nazca region. They came, they performed their ceremonies, and they left. The rituals performed at Cahuachi were not gentle. Excavations have revealed painted pottery depicting ritual performers, priests, and mythical beings engaged in ceremonial rites. Archaeologists found trophy heads lining the walls of tombs and decapitated heads that confirm ritual sacrifice, practices matching the imagery found in the geoglyphs. There are llama remains, bird plumage, and guinea pigs with broken necks, all sacrificial offerings. Engraved gourds show nature and abstract designs. Excavations uncovered elaborate textiles and musical instruments. Archaeologists also found the remains of sacrificed children and mummies that are 2,000 years old, preserved in the dry desert air. Many of the large line-type geoglyphs point directly toward Cahuachi. The pottery motifs found at the temple complex match the subjects depicted in the geoglyphs. The same orcas, birds, and humanoids appear in both media. Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Orefici, who has led decades of excavation at Cahuachi, believes the site holds the key to understanding the purpose of the lines. Looting remains a major and persistent threat to ongoing excavations. For nearly a century, one question dominated every debate about the Nazca Lines. Why did they create these drawings? The theories were all over the map. Astronomical calendar, proposed by Kosok and championed by Reiche. Water ritual sites, suggested by Johann Reinhard, noting the vital significance of water in a desert context. Groundwater source markers, connecting the lines to the pukios beneath the surface. Sacred pathways for processions and offerings, visible to the gods looking down from the heavens. Fertility and rain invocation, linking the hummingbird and spider to water in Andean mythology. And then, in 1968, Erich von Däniken proposed in Chariots of the Gods that the lines were alien landing strips. That idea was thoroughly discredited by every mainstream archaeologist who examined it. But it planted itself in public consciousness and has never fully gone away. The real answer, or at least the closest we have ever come to one, arrived in September 2024. And it came from a machine. The collaboration between Yamagata University and IBM began with a feasibility study conducted between 2018 and 2019 with IBM Japan. The platform was an IBM Power System AC922 server-running IBM Watson Machine Learning Community Edition. The result of that initial test was the first ever AI-discovered Nazca geoglyph, a small humanoid figure approximately 4 meters in size. It was a modest discovery, but it proved the concept. This led to a formal academic agreement between Yamagata University and IBM Research to scale the technology across the entire desert. In 2019, Yamagata announced 143 new geoglyphs. 142 were found through traditional fieldwork, and 3D data analysis accumulated over years, plus that single geoglyph discovered by the AI. It was promising, but it was just the first step. The full-scale deployment came between 2022 and 2024. The research team was led by Masato Sakai, distinguished research professor at the Yamagata University Institute of Nazca, who has spent 2 decades walking the Nazca Pampa. Alongside him were Akihisa Sakurai and Siuan Liu from Yamagata University, Jorge Olano from Université Paris 1, Pantheon-Sorbonne, Konrad Albrecht from the German Aerospace Center, and from IBM's Thomas J. Watson Research Center in Yorktown Heights, New York, Hendrik Hammann and Marcus Freitag. The team used IBM Pear's Geoscope, a cloud-based geospatial AI platform designed to process massive, disparate datasets, including LiDAR, drone imagery, and satellite data simultaneously. The system analyzed orthorectified RGB imagery at 10 centimeter resolution, meaning each pixel represented just 4 inches of desert floor. The deep learning model faced a fundamental challenge that would have stopped most AI projects cold. Traditional AI training requires tens of thousands of labeled examples, but only a few hundred geoglyphs were known in the entire world. You cannot train a machine to find something when you barely have enough examples to show it what that something looks like. The solution was transfer learning, starting with a general vision model already trained on millions of everyday photographs, then fine-tuning it specifically for desert imagery. The team also trained the model on negative examples, areas that had been surveyed on foot and confirmed to contain no geoglyphs, teaching the AI what empty desert looks like so it could better identify when something was there. Rather than boxing objects conventionally, the model treated the desert as a grid of tiny image tiles, scoring each one for geoglyph likelihood. The numbers that came out of this process tell the story. The AI analyzed 47,410 candidate boxes from aerial imagery. Human screeners then assessed those candidates and assigned 1,309 high-potential locations across 3 priority ranks. Field teams visited 341 of those locations on foot, spending 1,440 labor hours of ground survey, walking the desert floor to verify what the machine had flagged from above. They confirmed 303 new geoglyphs. That is roughly one actual geoglyph per 36 AI candidates. That hit rate might sound low if you are not familiar with archaeological survey methods, but the critical comparison is speed. This method produced geoglyph discoveries 20 times faster than any previous approach in history, because the AI could scan the entire 190 square mile pampa in hours rather than the decades it would take human surveyors to cover the same ground. Hendrik Hamann from IBM Research noted that tasks which previously would have taken months now take minutes. But the truly groundbreaking part of the 2024 study was not the speed. It was what the AI found and what those findings mean. All 303 new discoveries were relief-type geoglyphs. These are the smaller, harder-to-detect category, averaging just 9 meters in length, about 30 feet, with a range of 5 to 22 meters. Their subject matter was radically different from the famous large geoglyphs that tourists see from aircraft. 81.6% depicted human-related motifs, humanoids, decapitated heads, domesticated camelids, the llamas and alpacas that were central to Nazca economic and ritual life. The remainder showed killer whales, birds, felines, ceremonial scenes, and human-animal interaction scenes. Among the most striking finds was a 22-meter killer whale holding a knife, 72 feet of ancient artwork depicting an orca wielding a blade, located beside an ancient footpath. This image is not random or mysterious. Nazca pottery extensively depicts orcas wielding knives and cutting off human heads. The orca was positioned in Nazca cosmology as a supernatural being that carries out or sanctifies human sacrifice. The geoglyph's placement along a travel route suggests it served as a spiritual marker for Nazca travelers walking that path, a warning or a benediction, reinforcing the sacrificial iconography that permeated every aspect of their culture. And here is where the AI data fundamentally reshapes everything we thought we knew about the Nazca Lines. The average distance between these newly discovered relief-type geoglyphs and ancient foot trails was just 43 meters. They were not scattered randomly across the desert. They were deliberately positioned to be seen by individuals and small groups walking specific routes. Compare that to the famous large line-type geoglyphs. 64% of those depicted wild animal motifs: birds, whales, monkeys, spiders. They measured up to 370 meters long. They were associated with formal linear and trapezoidal geometric road networks, and they pointed toward Cahuachi. The 2024 study's key interpretive breakthrough was the dual-purpose model. The Nazca Lines are not one phenomenon. They are two parallel systems that served completely different purposes in Nazca society. The small relief-type geoglyphs were wayside information markers for individual travelers, telling stories of daily life, sacrifice, and spiritual warning along footpaths. The large line-type geoglyphs were community-scale ceremonial routes, guiding pilgrims to the Cahuachi temple complex for collective religious ritual. Professor Masato Sakai stated that the Nazca Line geoglyphs are not independent artwork, but through various combinations and arrangements, they seem to play a role as media for conveying the faith and memories of that time. Imagine walking through that desert 2,000 years ago. Every few hundred meters, another figure emerges from the stones beside the trail. A priest carrying a severed head, a llama standing watch, a killer whale with a blade raised, each one placed deliberately, telling a story that builds as you walk. Not a single random artwork, but a composed narrative, curated along pathways through the sacred landscape, the way chapters are arranged in a book. By August 2025, the discoveries had accelerated even further. On July 30, 2025, at Expo 2025 in Osaka, Japan, the Yamagata University team, led by Masato Sakai and Takashi Morioka, dean of the Yamagata University Nazca Institute, announced 248 additional new Geoglyphs discovered during 2023 and 2024 field surveys. 160 figurative geoglyphs and 88 geometric geoglyphs. This pushed the confirmed total to 893 figurative geoglyphs across the Nazca Pampa. 781 of those, the vast majority, were discovered using AI and aerial image analysis. That represents a discovery rate 16 times faster than pre-AI methods. The 2025 findings were even more disturbing than the first batch. They included 4 geoglyphs depicting human sacrifice scenes, a priest carrying a human head, evidence of thematic groupings along specific paths, with clusters themed around human sacrifice, wild birds, and domesticated animals, and spatial arrangements suggesting intentional narrative composition. The geoglyphs were not random. They told coherent stories along travel routes, stories about sacrifice, about the relationship between humans and the supernatural, about life and death in the desert. Now here is the part of this story that should genuinely concern everyone paying attention. Even as these discoveries were making international headlines, the ground beneath them was being threatened. On May 28, 2025, Peru's Ministry of Culture reduced the protected area around the Nazca Lines by 42%, from 5,633 square kilometers down to just 3,200 square kilometers. The decision was made quietly, without public consultation, and triggered immediate outcry from archaeologists, environmentalists, and former government officials who warned it would open vast areas to informal mining operations and weaken protections for undiscovered geoglyphs. The timing raised serious questions. 29 recently discovered geoglyphs in the El Ingenio and Changuillo areas would have lost protection entirely under the original reduction. Areas that the AI had flagged as likely containing hundreds more undiscovered figures would have been opened to commercial exploitation. After sustained international backlash, full protection was restored in June 2025. A new Nazca executing unit was created specifically for site management, and a UNESCO panel was given involvement in future decisions affecting the protected zone. But the crisis exposed just how fragile the site remains, even with World Heritage designation. This was hardly the first time the lines have been damaged. In 2014, Greenpeace activists damaged the area near the Hummingbird geoglyph during a climate protest, leaving footprints in the ancient desert surface. Luis Jaime Castillo Butters, then Peru's Vice Minister of Cultural Heritage, called the damage possibly irreparable. His exact words deserve attention. A bad step, a heavy step, marks the ground forever. There is no known technique to restore it the way it was. A 2,000-year-old surface destroyed by a single set of footprints. In 2012 and 2013, the Dakar Rally caused large-scale damage outside the UNESCO Core Protected Zone. In 2018, a truck driver drove 100 meters off-road, leaving deep tire scars across an area roughly 30 by 100 meters. He was arrested, but the scars remain. The Pan American Highway cuts directly through the Nazca Lines, with construction and increasing traffic creating ongoing risks. And looting of burial sites, especially around Cahuachi, remains a persistent and largely uncontrolled threat. The future brings new dangers that no amount of fencing or policing can fully address. Climate change is increasing flash flooding, unexpected rainfall, and accelerated erosion in a region that has survived for 2 millennia precisely because it almost never rains. Informal mining operations continue expanding into protected zones. Unregulated tourism and vehicle incursions chip away at the desert surface year after year. Urban expansion from nearby towns creeps steadily closer. And even the researchers making these globally significant discoveries are themselves under threat. Yamagata University, the institution that has led Nazca research for over 2 decades, faced a domestic funding crisis in 2025. Annual operational grants were cut by 90 million yen. University president Hidetoshi Tamate warned publicly that long-term basic research programs, including the Nazca work, were at direct risk. Consider the irony. A research program that has produced findings published in the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals on Earth, discoveries covered by every major news outlet in the world, now struggles for basic operational funding at the university that houses it. But perhaps the most remarkable number in this entire story is one that gets almost no attention in mainstream coverage. 968. That is how many high-potential artificial intelligence candidate locations have not yet been visited for ground verification. They are still sitting in the database, flagged by the machine, waiting for human feet to walk the desert floor and confirm what the algorithm detected from above. Based on the confirmed hit rate from the first round of field surveys, researchers estimate that 200 to 300 additional geoglyphs likely await discovery among those candidates. The Nazca Desert almost certainly holds more than 1,100 figurative geoglyphs in total, and we have confirmed fewer than 900. The artificial intelligence methodology developed for Nazca is now being adapted for archaeological sites around the world. Similar deep learning techniques are already being applied to the identification of Mediterranean shipwrecks and the mapping of Cambodian temple complexes hidden beneath jungle canopy. The approach works anywhere that large-scale survey meets limited human resources and funding. Improvements in satellite imagery coverage continue to enable smaller and smaller teams to serve vastly larger areas than was ever previously possible. Consider what we now know. A civilization that existed 2,000 years ago etched stories into the desert floor that were designed to be read by travelers walking ancient paths. Those stories depicted their deepest beliefs, their rituals, their sacrifices, and their relationship with the supernatural world. For 2 millennia, most of those stories lay hidden because they were too small, too faded, and too numerous for human eyes to find. It took a machine, scanning from above at 10-centimeter resolution, to read what the Nazca wrote for people walking below. Maria Reiche spent 50 years in that desert, measuring lines with tape and sextant, living alone in a small house near the Pampa. She died in 1998, never knowing that artificial intelligence would one day find 300 figures in the time it took her to carefully catalog a handful. But without her 50 years of solitary advocacy, there would be no UNESCO protection. Without her painstaking measurements, there would be no baseline data for the artificial intelligence to build upon. Without her sacrifice, there might be no lines left to find at all. UNESCO describes the Nazca Lines as a remarkable manifestation of common religion and social homogeneity in the ancient Nazca world. They represent the largest-scale ancient artwork on Earth, a testament to organizational capacity, mathematical precision, and religious devotion that has no parallel anywhere in the archaeological record. The Nazca people etched stories big enough to survive 2,000 years of wind and sun. And now, with artificial intelligence reading those stories at unprecedented speed, the desert that has kept its secrets for 2,000 years is finally beginning to speak. 968 candidates are still waiting in the sand. The question we should all be asking is whether we will protect what we find before it disappears forever. Like and subscribe to follow this story as it develops. If we have learned anything from the Nazca Lines, it is that the most important discoveries are the ones hiding in plain sight. If we want to see what happened when researchers pointed this same kind of AI technology at ancient sites buried beneath the jungles of Cambodia, that video is on screen now.